Okay, so today, what I wanted to do for you is talk about tips and tricks in Excel that are good for JET Reports users. That's why I didn't throw it out to the general public, because I really wanted to engage with current JET Reports customers and talk about how you could improve, be more efficient in doing your JET Reports and learn a little bit more Excel. Now, you'll see I have a number of topics I want to talk about here. So I want to talk about, we're going to start off with little shortcuts. And the reason I bring this up, I know a lot of you know a lot of this, but I see customers struggling when I'm doing support calls. I see them struggling and navigating around a spreadsheet. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about troubleshooting, and I know a lot of you are not that familiar with some troubleshooting techniques right within Excel. I want to talk about Excel grouping and how to take that Excel grouping and copy it onto another spreadsheet without copying everything behind the grouping. And then we're going to look at about dynamic titles and labels in your report. Most of you know this, but we're going to cover some of the technique on it. We're going to talk about date functions. Again, I know most of you know this, but hopefully I'm going to give you some other tips. And we're going to tie it together and look at an example of how you can create dynamic titles and labels. I have an example there. Then we're going to move over to looking at conditions and in our reports. I'm going to show you some good techniques in here. Again, I know most of you know if statements and if errors, but we're just going to have a quick look at them. We're going to look at some fun things with lists. We're going to look at some fun graphics. So I'm excited to show you those. And each one of these here, you see it has it's a hyperlink to another work page. And on where I can, you'll see that I have a hyperlink to Office, Microsoft Office, to give you more information about the topic we're discussing, and including this one on how to hyperlink worksheets. So let's get going. Now, I apologize. My voice is a bit croaky this morning. I did have a cold, and it was mainly affecting my throat. I thought I was over it, but here I am today, croaking like a crazy person. So I apologize. But let's get into this, and let's see if we can how much we can get done in an hour. So navigation. I want to talk about navigation, and this I find in JET is helpful because sometimes when we're writing a JET report, we get the JET results. It can be a really long list of data. It can be thousands upon thousands of rows, maybe hundreds of columns. And how can I quickly get around that spreadsheet? Because I often want to get right down to the very end. And sometimes I've done things I didn't realize it was going to come out to be such a long spreadsheet. All my totals are at the bottom, and I want to check it. So how can I quickly get around here? Now, I put myself in the top left-hand corner, and all I'm going to do is hold my control key and my arrow. So I'm going to arrow left first, and you see it shoots me over the last column. If I arrow down, it shoots me to the corner and to the very bottom. And if I hit my left arrow, it takes me to the left and up again. So that's an easy peasy one. And I do see customers doing a lot of page to get there. It's a lot of work and it's wasting your time. We're talking about productivity. Now, this one, I don't know why people would use this so much, but if you wanted to see the intersect, you go to the very last row and column, which means how do I get myself down to here really quickly? Well, I can just hit Control and my N key. No, you know what? For me, if I have my function key on, that doesn't work. It does something else. So if I hit Control and N, it pops me down to that corner. That's an easy peasy one. If I want to highlight my whole block of data, I just have to go into Control and A, and it lights that whole thing up. That's pretty handy if you're quickly trying to copy a section into another workbook. If I want to highlight from the last row and column, now I've put my cursor somewhere else so you can see what happens here. If I go Control Shift and End, it takes me over there. Might be useful, maybe not. Editing. I see a lot of people struggling to edit. And you see I have a formula in here, and I might want to click on that formula. Now look, I just double clicked. So what happened here was I double clicked and it can see where my cells are that are in my formula, but more importantly, it popped me up here. So I don't have to go up into that formula bar. I can also use function F2 and do the same thing. But I find double click. And, you know, in this case, I made a bit of typing error. I just wanted to sum that last row. I'm just going to take that out. But, you know, look at this. I can pull this across the page. I see customers fiddling and typing, trying to get stuff in here. Learn how to pull those boxes across and see the arrow that I've got going on here. That'll help that one. Formatting the number. There's easier ways to do this. Now, most of us want to go up into here and we get the format button and we fool around, or maybe what we want is up in here and we can do that, or maybe we right click and we have some of the formula things are in here, or you know, we're going to go in and we're going to look at more formats. Did you know that all you had to do was hit Control Shift? Watch what happens to this number here where my cursor is when I hit the number 1. Look at that, I put a format. Look when I do number 2, look when I do number 3 and 4 and 5, and on it goes. So you could use Control Shift and a key and get some formats. The other thing I see happening with customers is not understanding that there's a shortcut with the F4 key. You know what, we're trying to do a reference and they may lock it down and we need to put a $ in front of the row or the column, or maybe just the column, or maybe just the row. And I see customers going in here and they put the $. If you just hit on your F4 key and you hit it once, it does it, oops, and I hit the number 4. And let's just take this and just make this different because I find this confusing. So if I hit the F4 key, now why is that not doing that for me? If I hit the F4 key, I don't know why that is not doing it. Son of a gun. Just when you want things to work and it's not. Okay, well, we're going to get up into here and I didn't need to get into the formula bar itself. So you can see one toggle, it puts a $ in front of the row and the column reference. If I hit it once, it's just in front of the row. If I hit it 3 times, it's just in front of the column. And if I hit it for the 4th time, it just takes them right out. So not a shortcut key. So hopefully you'll find some of that more useful and productive for yourself. Now, troubleshooting. Troubleshooting in Excel is very useful for troubleshooting a JET formula as well. So there's 3 things I wanted to show you. One is most people don't realize in their formula toolbar, there is formula auditing that can be very helpful in evaluating troubleshooting. You can also use the F9 key in part of the formula. Just be careful you don't hit enter, because when you hit enter, you lock the result into your formula and you wipe out that part of the formula. So you don't want to do that. So let me show you the F9 key in action and let me show you formula review. Now I have a little if statement here. It's a silly one. And I'm saying in my if statement, I have 3 sections to it. And I'm asking if this cell and this cell equals green and red, then return holiday cheer. If it doesn't say green and red, then go over and you ask the next question. And the question says, if this cell equals black and this cell equals orange, say Halloween, otherwise say no celebration. Now, kind of silly, but you can see red and green, it says green and red. And so technically it should say holiday cheer, but it doesn't. It says Halloween, and I want to understand why. So I can come up here and I can highlight my formula where it says, oopsie, yeah. I highlight it because I only want that section. I'm going to hit my F9 key and it's going to evaluate that section. Because what I'm looking for, when you're doing an if statement, you're asking a question where the answer can be true or false. And so I want to see a true or false here. Now, when I press F9, it says false. Now, I'm careful if I hit enter, that false is going to stay in there and I'll wipe out my formula. So I don't have my answer yet. What I want to do then is I want to go through evaluate formula and figure out what's going on. I click on this and make sure I'm on my formula, and I click on it and I can step in, and so it sees all my formula. And you can see here, there's a little line under B11. It's going to look at that. So I step in and I step out. And I can see here, it says green. And when I step out, it says green. Does green equal green? Evaluated. True. Okay, well, let's step in and let's look at C11. It says it's red. Well, let's step out and it puts red in and I evaluate and it says false. So I know that's the problem, but let me start that again because I'll show you what I saw. I really saw step in, step out, step in, evaluate, step in. It says red, step out. Look in here. Now I see there's a space. It's red, but it's not red. It's space red. And so they are not exactly the same. And that helps me. And I can work my whole way through that formula, troubleshooting what's going on in that formula and assessing it. So now when I go back in here and I change this to red, my formula is now working. So a lot of people miss this wonderful feature in Excel of looking for what's going on. I can also look at this formula and I can do things like trace what's dependent here. Oops, nothing. What's the precedence? Ah, I can see these 4 cells are part of this formula. That can be really helpful. And I just remove the arrows when I don't want to look at it. Another helpful feature in troubleshooting and fixing reports is using find and replace. Now, you can see I have holiday cheer here, and maybe I want to change all those to happy holidays. And this is just a quick example, but sometimes I'm working in a big workbook and I've used the wrong phrase all through the workbook. In particular, in JET, we might have used the wrong, say, data source in our formulas and we need to change it. And we're like, oh my goodness, where is all this data source information? So watch what happens when I go into my home ribbon and I do find and replace. Now I could go in here and say, find holiday cheer. And I can say, oh, replace that with happy holidays. That's what I want. I can do find next. I can do find all. And I like this because it tells me exactly where I'm going to find all those holiday cheers. And you can see it's more than the 3 that I have down here. You can see it's also in my formula. When I do replace all, it's replaced it in the formula and you see my formula change too. So this is very helpful doing find and replace when we're trying to update our JET formulas and understand what's going on. Okay, I know this is going to help. This one was going to help a bunch of you. So there you go. Now let's look at Excel's grouping feature. And I've got this covered so it won't distract you, but I'm going to uncover it because it's got some hints in here. JET, in one of JET's features, it's the report wizard. It does some grouping for you automatically if you tell it to. But how do you do grouping? Well, let's go into the data tab here and you see at the very end there's group and ungroup. So how do we do this? Well, we highlight the rows we want to group, that we want hidden because it's too much clutter. And I highlight those rows and I go into group and you'll see there's a tab there. And when I close the tab, it hides it. When I click on the tab, it opens it. Most of you are familiar with it, but maybe not know how that worked. So I'm going to do this one as well, and I'm going to group it. And if I want to ungroup it, I would simply ungroup and it's gone. So let's group it again. And you can see in our arrow, our bar here, I've only got 2 levels of grouping. I could have as many as I want, and I can collapse the whole thing, and it takes it to here. That's grand. So you'll see under here, I've got my screenshot of group and ungroup, so you'll remember where it is and pointing to the data tab. So that's there if you want to play with grouping and ungrouping. But you know, sometimes we run a report and it's grouped in that, but you only want the summary information like you see here. And you go and take this and we do our usual, let's copy. And I've got another worksheet here and let's paste this. And I go and I paste. Oops, I didn't accidentally did that wrong, but I don't want to see. Ooh, I brought my grouping over it. That wasn't what I wanted. I only wanted the summary. How do I get to this? Let's go back to our page where our grouping is. And you start off, you highlight everything you have. Now you can hit your function F5 key, you can hit Control G, and it launches your go-to dialog box. When you're in here, what you want to do, now remember you've highlighted your area you want to copy over. You go on special and you say visible cells only, you say okay, and you see it's kind of looks funny now, it's done some things. Now you can go ahead and copy. You go over to your other work page and you click, and the grouping didn't come through. I've had so many customers go to me, say to me, I didn't know you could do that. I went and copied it over and I started deleting the rows, and oh, it was crazy. You know, it just took me forever to get that over there. So there you go. That's that one. And of course, underneath here's the secret of how did I do that. So I'm going to keep that there for now because I'm doing this again in 3 hours. So that's your visible cells. Now, I want to get into working with how to properly title worksheets and what have you. And I got to say, one of the big things about JET reports that was great for me was the Excel that I learned, because I always talk about how many years of my life did I waste going into workbooks as an accountant and titling each page on each worksheet in a workbook, doing it independently, and then putting dates in. And I always talk about when, you know, have you ever done a presentation to your team, management, your board, and they look at it and they say, this isn't the right date. Is this report right, or is the date wrong? And if you were like me, you were working till the 11th hour to get these reports finished, and you look at it and you're so tired, you're thinking, oh, I'm not even sure now. So, you know, there goes your credibility. The one thing about learning how to use JET, it taught me how to work with Excel so much better, so that when I'm doing a report, I only enter one date. I don't update any other worksheet. I let Excel do all that. So we're going to get into how some of that happens. And we're going to start about talking about, now I say concatenate or concatenate, you know, it concatenate. There's a formula in Excel called equals concat, and you'll see here where it's highlighted blue and underscore, that's my hyperlink. That'll take you to the Microsoft Office article on this particular formula. In the newer versions of Excel, it's just called concat. In older versions, it's called equals concatenate. And the idea is that you can point to your different pieces of text and it pulls it together. But honestly, I never use this. I see customers using this and I'm going, you know what? You don't have to. You don't need to do that. You can, as long as you use an equal sign, you refer to your text, or you put your text in quotes or a cell reference, and you connect your pieces of text by the ampersand, you don't need to use this formula. So it's a bit of a shortcut to do it this way, and I think this is easier to edit. Now, let's look at a simple example here and where it's useful. So for sure, in titles, so you can see in here, and I've done it two ways, both ways. I've got a piece text here for the period ending, and the second piece of text is December 31st, 2019. Now, I left a space in here because I'm not showing space just yet, but I want you to see how it looks. So here you can see my concat formula, and it's pointing to these two things, and it's brought it together. But I find it's easier just to point to the cells, put an ampersand in the middle. You can even leave a space between the cell references and the ampersand, and I find it's easier to do it this way. Now, where it gets more exciting is, and what I think it's, so I can do my dynamic labeling on my reports here for my dates. That's a big saver. I also find it sometimes when we're working with JET and we're pulling out pieces of text together, we don't necessarily want to see the text in separate cells. So what we can do is we can, in for report presentation, is we can use this to join them together. In this case, I have three pieces of text. I start off with my cell reference, an ampersand, and in quotation marks, I'm putting a hyphen with a space on either side. For presentation, I don't have to have that. That's just how I want to look at it. And then I'm referring to the last piece of text. So this can come in really handy when you're working in JET to be able to work with concatenate. Even in Excel, it's handy to use. It doesn't have to be a JET thing. This is an Excel thing. Let's move on to, and let me put this back so I don't forget later on. Equals text, and I know a lot of you know how to use equals text, but let's talk about what it can do for you. There's two parts to this formula in Excel, and the first part is the value you want to format. So we're talking values here. And then the second part is the format code you want to apply. Notice that it always has to be in quotation marks, whatever your formatting is. Now, we use this a lot with dates, and most of you know that, but did you know that you can also use it for numbers? And this can be quite handy when you're bringing data up using JET, you're bringing it into Excel and it comes in not quite the way you want to see it. You can use this to change your format around. So, you know, in this case, if I didn't want a dollar sign, I would just do this and it would change it to this. So there's lots of things you can do here to force that formatting in to that value. So I'll take, oops. Let me get that back in there. So that is that text one. And sometimes leading zeros is a problem in a JET report and you want to see it. Sometimes it comes in just to 1, 2, 3, 4, no leading zeros. But you need to refer this for the rest of the JET report for what's going on. This is how you can get this in. Okay, that's about our text. We're doing well. We have another half hour to go. So we're doing well. Equals today. Most of you are familiar with equals today, and where I like this is, and I didn't put a reference for Excel for this because it's pretty straightforward. It's just equals today, nothing in between the brackets, and it's going to tell you today's date. It's dynamic. It's called a volatile function. And where do we usually use it? In titles. So we want to do things like report run date. We always want to know what day it is today when we're running that report. So we can do equals today and with our text function, and we will get out the right information. So there you see it there, right? So that's handy to have it in there. And also sometimes in report filters, many of us use the NP function. You don't have to. You can just use a bit of text in today and your function is ready to go, or your filter value is ready to go. So lots of practical applications for working with the today function. Moving along, let's talk about date functions. And there's a couple here that I want to show you. So let's go into the first one here, and it's the date function. And it is equals date, year, month, day. And that's great when you've brought in, or perhaps in your user options, you're saying you want them to use, enter the date, the year, the month, the day. When you do that, I can use this date function and I can just refer to those cells. Now I'm going to have to cough here, so just let me mute myself. I apologize. I also snuck in a sip of coffee in my Santa mug, and he's carrying a tree and he has a teddy bear down in his foot. So that's great when it's like that. However, we know that it's, we're bringing dates in through JET, or our end users are entering the date like this. So this formula has to change a little bit, and we have to work with more Excel functions inside that formula. Specifically, we have to work with equals year, equals month, and equals day. And that's why when we come in here, it has to look like this. And you can see I'm referring to the cell up above, and it is year with in brackets. This is cell reference, and you know that's okay. Well, why would we do that if we already entered in the date? Why do I care? We can do because we can manipulate this. So let's see what this looks like. A lot of you know this, some of you don't. So some of you are putting hand coding the dates in, and you don't need to. Look what happens when I refer to that input date. I just subtract -1 off the year, and I've got that date 1 year ago. I can come in here and I can do the prior month. Now, this is a bit of a trick. I put in, you think you do -1 for the month, but if you do that, watch what happens. Now let's just take this out and do -1 and put in day, and refer up there. Yes, we need to close the whole thing off. I'm getting 30 days ago. I'm not getting the last day of the month. So you can't do that where you're just subtracting one off the month. You have to be a little more clever about it. So what we're doing here is we say, well, let's go to the beginning of the current month and subtract a day. Easy peasy, right? Stay in your current month, go to the beginning by putting a 1 for the day and then just subtracting a day. I can also do the start of the year. So as you saw here, I had the number 1 in here. I can simply say, if it's January 1st, I can just put 1 for the month and 1 for the start date. For not-for-profit people, this might be something like April 1st, and it would be the year 4 in 1. So lots of ways to manipulate your dates, but only enter your 1 report date and let Excel do a lot of the work. Now this is fine, but this can be a little bit cumbersome. And I think with Excel 2007, they introduced us another way to work with dates, and it's called end of month. And the idea of end of month is you point to your date that you've already got established, and you tell it how many months you want to go forwards or backwards. And this can be really handy. So let's look at some examples here. We enter a date filter of today's date. How about that? And I want to know what's the end of the month for this. So I could be running a report. This could be equals today, but I want to know what's the end of the month. I'm simply going to point to that formula. And what I want for the number of months is 0. I want to stay in this month. So it's always going to tell me what the end of this month is. I can, just like with the date formula, I can continue to manipulate this. When I do that, if I want to go back 1 month, I simply put a -1. When I want to go 2 months later, like forward, I can use a 2. Really handy if you're doing something like quarters and you want to do 3 months, right? You could do it that way. Now, there's another way you can do in Excel's NP dates, but we don't always want to do that. Sometimes this is just easier, right? It's another way to do this, to accomplish this. I can also do start of next month, and I can do the 0 plus 1. So I can be outside the formula adding to it. And, I can do the beginning of this current month by going back a month and adding a day. Very similar ideas. So there's many different ways you can manipulate dates, and I encourage you, if you're haven't got this figured out and you're doing a lot of setting up filters by keying in what was the date last month, what was the date last year, save yourself a lot of trouble, learn how to work with date and end of month, and it will be so much better for you. And then you're not making mistakes, and you're also not relying on end users to put in the right dates, right? It just starts to remove spreadsheet or report errors. Let's have an example of what this would look like. I'm going to tie this all together for you so you can see how this would work. Here is, they say this is my end user information, and all I want is just put in the reporting period that you want to report on. Just key that in, and you can see it's put my title in there. It's referring to that cell. I've come in and I've done some labeling over my columns because I'm doing say a financial statement, and I want to look at this year for the month and the year to date, and last year for the month to date. My column headings using my text, it's tied into it, but it's tied into I've hidden it. And the same here is tied in. And what have I hidden here? Well, underneath here, I've got my dates all happening. Excel's doing this. And you can see I'm using end of month here. I've started off, my end date is just going to be what I keyed in here, what my end user keyed in. And then I'm using Excel formulas to calculate the rest. And you see sometimes I choose to use the date function because to me it's easier to think about. I know if I just do point to the year and do 1/1, I'm good. I don't need to fiddle around with end of month and figure that one out. It was just easier for me to use the date function. And so you see I'm doing that. I'm using end of month and that. It's whatever works for you. And just note, you only want to enter the date once and get Excel to update everything else. So you see my titles changed here, all my dates changed here, my report title changed here as well. So that is working with dates and making life easier for yourself. So many of you already know this, but particularly new people and people who haven't really had a lot of chance to take training on JET would think about this. I think this is very handy. So I'm showing you things I see commonly. I've been doing JET for 12 years. I'm working with customers, and these are the most common things I see where customers could improve their Excel technique to work with JET. Now let's get into if statements, and a lot of you know about if statements. So if statements start off with a logical test. So it's 3 parts. You ask a question that's a yes or no. And there's different ways you can ask that question. I showed you earlier, I had an and statement in there. I'm going to show you one with an or statement. But your question has to be yes, or your answers have to be yes or no, or true or false. And you want action to happen if it's true or if it's false. So here we have a typical spreadsheet. And we're doing some calculations here. It's a financial statement. I'm looking at my percentages. And I might want to do some more flagging of what's going on in here. So a simple if statement would look at this and say, is it over or under the budget? And all I've done here is I've said, is the actual greater than the budget? If it is, put it over, say over, otherwise say under. That's the action I want to happen. And you can see, so I'm going to hit the escape, it's worked. And by the way, if I go like this, and I want to flash fill that down, or get that formula copied down, I don't have to copy paste. I just have to go like, I have to do this right. I can never, yeah, see, now when I want to do it, I can never seem to get it right. Okay, if I'm clicking in here, I should be able to get the flash fill down, and it's not. Never mind, you can look at that another time. It's not that important. So that's a simple one. I can also ask, is it over by 10%? And how did I do that? Because I've got a second if statement in here. Now, if I look at it in here, this is probably the easier way to ask it. First off, I wanted to know that my question is the actual greater than the budget? And if the answer is yes, I'm going to ask a second question. Is it over by 10%? And if it is, it's going to return the result over 10%. Otherwise, it's going to be blank. That's a nested if statement. We can do many nested if statements. Sometimes it takes a while to figure it out, because as soon as it passes the first condition, it's not going to ask a second question. If you need it to ask the second question, you have to write this so that it will automatically go to the second question. So an example would be, if it's not over 10%, I might ask the question, is it over 5%? And if that's so, I might say over 5%. So you have to be able to lead it in the right direction, that it takes you to where you want to go in your chain of looking at the true or false of nested if statements. That's a simple one, and that can be quite handy. Most of you know that. Some of you don't know about putting another statement in here. Now, if you look at this one, and I go into my formula bar, I'm asked a different question. What I want to know is it over 10%, or is it less than 10%, minus 10%? So I want the 10% plus or minus. I want to know if it's that way. And if it is, out more than 10%. So whether it's over or under 10%, I want to know that 10% either side of zero. That lets me bury an equals or statement in. So equals or and equals and can be really handy to use within your if statements. So we're testing for conditions. Where I find that's handy, and a lot of you know that, but did you know that you can use it in your JET functions as well? So in this example here, I'm testing for a table, and I've used this technique a lot in JET. I've said, in this case, it's an example out of the JET Help Center. If it was in V3 equals the word 42, then use the customer table. Otherwise, it's blank, and this just renders the function useless. It'll go to, it'll just return an empty cell. But in this case, it will give me the names of all the customers if whatever was in cell B3 happened to equal the number 42. Kind of a weird example, but you know where I've used it is things like if I'm looking at the GL table, and my source could be customer or it could be vendor, but I want the name of the customer or the vendor. So I could be saying if, and I would ask it to turn out the source type. And if I would say if it's the source type equals vendor, go to the vendor table. If the source type equals customer, go to the customer table. So that's a cool way to use if statements within a JET function. Now, if you're a NAV customer, and most of you are, you can also do if statements to compare NAV fields. Now, for GP customers, we can't do this. This is something unique to NAV. And so in this example here, we want to know who the sales invoice headers, we want to know the sales number for that particular record in that table. If the bill to customer is the same as the customer number, we want to see that number. So we're looking, and so you can see it's all within the brackets here. So we're comparing as JET is reading the record in NAV. It's looking at the fields in NAV for that record that's hit JET at that time, and it's looking at those two fields and comparing them. And if the if statement is true, then it's going to return that customer number, or that document number. This is the technique that you're doing. Now you'll notice here, the if statement starts with a quote in here and ends with a quote. And really what happens is there's two parts to it. We want the comparator, and we have to tie in what the field name is. And you know what? It's probably easier if I show it to you this way. Let me take the space out here and let's turn this into a JET formula. And just give it a sec. We see JET, it's running. Oh, look at that. It's already hit it. So it's giving me a number. So let's go into our JET ribbon, and I need this to go away. My drop down. Let's have a look at the JET FX to see how that looks. So I want you to see the two parts. So this is no problem. We know about rows. We're going to that sales invoice header, and we want the number. But we want to filter. And what we want to say for that number, that document number, we're going to ask the question. And the question is this if statement. And within this if statement, this is where we go back to, sorry, you don't need to see that. In fact, we'll close that. I only opened it to get the meeting. What we're going to do here, if I take this out again, and it's probably, oops, gone dark. Yeah, I've lost it. When we come back in here, we're looking at this part again. So you'll see that the first part of this is all part of it. Sorry, beg your pardon. And we'll go in here and we'll hit it with red so we can see it better. It starts with a quotation. It ends with quotation. When we're in here, we're saying if, and we use an NF. And because we're in the table already, we don't need to refer to a record key. We're already in it. So we leave the first part blank. We put a comma in here. But notice when we're doing the if statement, the field names have to be in double quotes. So we're saying, is the bill to number? If the bill to number equals the sell to number, give me that number. And it's got to be the same as whatever this field is here. It's got to be the same thing as is with this here. So this is a very handy feature. I've used this technique so many times, but it's working with an if statement inside a JET formula. So getting to know how to use if statements can be quite handy when you're writing your JET report. Okay, let's move over to if error. Most of you know this, but if you see pound divide by 0 message coming out or a pound value, and you're writing a dynamic report and you don't even realize this is going to come out, if you use if error, it cleans up a lot of those messages that might happen. In this case, it's just telling us you can't divide by 0. It's mathematically impossible. So to get around it, when we're creating our JET reports, we're going to do, if this comes up as an error, this formula, oopsie, if this formula comes up as an error message, now most of you want to put blank blank. That's not a good idea, because if I'm totaling a column, it will come up pound value. It doesn't know what to do with it. So you need to put, if we're working with numbers, we need to put a 0 in here, and we say 0. And that fixes it. So when you're writing in JET reports and you're doing things like this, where you're doing mathematical calculations, you want to work if error. You can also do it with an if statement, but this was if error was introduced years ago. I think again, it might have been an Excel 2007 thing where they brought in this easier way of dealing with error messages coming out of Excel. Oh, I've only got 10 minutes left. Conditional format. Now, I could do a whole big thing on conditional formatting. I might do that one day, but I wanted to show you a little trick. If I go like this and I right click, you see this? Quick analysis. Oh, look at this, formatting, bin. Oh, I just did my quick formatting. So I wanted to show you that. And how did I get that? Will you ever remember? Don't worry about it, it's here. I put it in here so you'll know, right? So quick analysis, you can quickly format your results of a spreadsheet, and you can go in if you need to, if you know about conditional formatting. I can change the degree to which this goes red. I won't get too much into it today, but I just wanted to show you can do quick analysis, and that is in there, and you can edit the rule and you can change it to whatever you want to do. So that's in there, quick analysis, conditional formatting, pretty easy peasy. More about conditional formatting on Microsoft's Office website. So easy, easy. Equals lookup. Most of you know how to use equals lookup. If I'm in here and I've got customers entering things, so I'm thinking about options in JET reports. Sometimes this is easier to do. So if I have here, I want NL, my result is going to look at whatever I put in here, and it's going to look at my range of information, go over to the second column, and it'll give it to me, and no problem. Now, sometimes we do Newfoundland like this, and oops, it's going to give me New Brunswick. And that's because I don't have a true match. If I want an exact match, I'd have to go in here and put the word, instead of true, I would put the word false. And by default, it is on true. So if I do this, you see it says NL and NA, which means not applicable. So I have to get the right information in, and it'll be fine. So just working with our lookups, that's there. Some of you already use it, but we use VLOOKUP quite a bit in JET reports for different aspects. Where it also comes in handy, instead of having them type this, I can do a list. And I've got, of course, the information how to do this. Now, to do a list is pretty easy peasy. So I'm going to come in here, because I want them not to remember this. This could be a huge long list, right? And I'm putting this in alphabetical order, but how can I make this in a drop-down list. I go to my data tab, I highlight what I want to be the drop-down because I want it for here, and I come in here and there is a list command in here on data validation. And I come in here, I ask for a list, it's already highlighting the range because I'm there, and I say, okay, now when I come over to here, why isn't it in there? Come on, did I not do it there? Data validation, oh, no, I didn't. Here we go, list, and then I highlight my range. And I say, okay. Now I have a drop down arrow and I can pick these instead so that the end user doesn't have to do that. And I combine that with my VLOOKUP and I can get some fast information happening there. Pretty handy to have instead of making your end users type it in. Sometimes this is handy when we're doing things where you're not tapping into an Excel or sorry, a NAV or a GP table or whatever database you're using, and you can't get that drop down. You might be doing something here where you want to talk about East Coast, West Coast, whatever. There's different ways to do it. And so I've got my screenshot here of how I did that. Okay, flash fill, this can be fun. Now I just kind of put this in here for fun because I thought it was interesting. Where it's useful is for quickly parsing data. Have you ever done a list out of NAV and it comes in kind of funny looking like this? Well, if I go like this and I just give it the clue on how I want this to come out, and you can see here, I've already given you the hint. If I go back to my Excel home ribbon and I hit this and I hit flash fill, it pulls everything out for me. And that can be pretty handy because sometimes we're parsing data. It can be addresses, it can be names, it can be, if you're using Jet Analytics, you want to separate the account number from the description. This can be handy for doing this. Okay, flash fill. Oh, I've only got 5 minutes left. Oh, I want to show you something cute and it's Christmassy. So look at this. I have cookie sales, and wouldn't it be fun to do it as pictures instead of bars? How did I do this? And by the way, watch this and watch my title in my chart when I press enter. How did I do that? Easy peasy. Let's do it. So I'm going to leave this up here so you can see it, and I'm going to show you how I did it. I'm going to come in here and I'm highlighting. Don't grab the totals. Just get your column headings and your data, your row headings, column headings, and your data. We go in here. We're going to do a bar chart. And we're going to pick this guy, and that's not, I wanted to see my years. Now, why is that doing that? Oh, maybe did I do it this way? I did this like 16 times last night to practice. We'll figure it out. Let's get in here. We'll do it. And we will come in and we're going to switch row and column. Will that do it for me? There we go, 2015. That fixed it. Okay, how did I, first off, that chart title. How the heck did I do that? It's pretty easy. I come in here and I go equals and I point to here. Well, sometimes it works. Don't, hold on. We're gonna come equals. We'll do it this way. And I just got rid of it. Let me close this. Shoot, I gotta watch my time here, but I'll show you in here. I've just referred to that cell in here when I did it. So equals pit graph, it's gonna come over to here, right? And B4. So that's easy peasy. I'm not gonna fuss around because I have one more thing I wanna show you for sure. And then how do I get my pictures in? Well, you have to have your pictures already. And I'm gonna pick the one bar here. You start with your first bar and you do come into your format that section, and we're going to come to your formatting your data series. You come into your fill and you'll see on fill that you can actually get a picture, and you go get your picture. Now mine's on my desktop, And let's go to my desktop. You don't need to see my family pictures. I go into my cookie images. There's my chocolate chip, and I say insert. And there's my chocolate chip. Now I can stack and stack with scale. Stack with scale is good if you have a lot of pictures coming through. You can get it to get smaller, but I just need stack for this, and it comes through. And then I can do my, it's the same, exactly the same thing. I come in, go to my file, let's get my gingerbread, and it comes, and so on. And I'm going to stack it, and it's there. And I come over to my file again, to my last bar, and I get my picture. And I'm going to stack it. Whoops, let's get my file first, get my shortbread cookies, and it's done. Well, wasn't that fun? But I can take it one step further. I can go into, what about a dynamic chart? Now watch this one. Look at this. I have little radial buttons. And see this? Look how it changes when I do this. This is easy peasy to do. You'll note that and you could do both these graphs on the same page, but note here that when I'm doing when you're looking at my chart for where's the data coming from, I'm not going to the first one. I'm going to here, right? I'm in here when I'm doing this. So we're graphing off this section here, not our main section. And there's a little trick in here to get these buttons in here. You need to have your developer ribbon turned on. How do I do that? I just go into Format, Options. I look at my Customize ribbon, and I make sure my developer ribbon is activated, and it's in there. And all I'm doing is adding a control. And when I look at the control, so let's look at this control here and format the control, I can see the properties. First off, the key here is you have to say checked, and you have to point to this cell here. Now there's some VLOOKUPs going on here, but you're going to point to this cell where you see the number 3. And in my text here, instead of saying radial button or optional button one, how am I labeling it? I'm putting in the year for it. I know you're going to ask me, can I make those radial buttons dynamic because my year is going to change? Yes, you can, but it requires Visual Basic coding, and that's not what I'm showing you today. So I just thought this was fun to have a look at these radial buttons in our charts, and you may find a good use for it because visually it's pretty interesting. I made it fun, but it's pretty interesting how that's working. Now, how is it getting this coming in? Again, VLOOKUP, and it looks at what's happening in here. It's like by magic, man, that this is all changing. It looks at whatever's in V10, and it adds a 1 to it. I'm actually out of time. And you're going to say, wait, I don't really understand what you did. Don't worry about it. When you go to here, it's going to take you to a step-by-step on how I did this. Okay, that's it for our 1 hour. Now, let's just see. Do we have any chats? Anybody? Nope. And do we have any more questions? So let's just see. Questions, Q&As. Nope, no questions. Now I want to do a poll, and I want to ask a question. I was speaking with my colleague, and he said to me, why don't we do a workshop in the spring? And he wants to come from Denmark, and he and his associate, and she's in Germany, and they are jet experts. He's been doing jet longer than I have. And I've been doing it for 12, 13 years. He's been doing it a year or two longer than I am. He would love to do a workshop. He loves Canada, and he'd love to come over. And so what I wanted to do was ask the question, would you be interested in a workshop? And so let's see if I've done this. I've never done this before in Zoom. So let's just see if we can make this work. I think you can see my screen. Save it. Oh, that's the answer. I got it. Okay, would you be interested in the work? Yes. No. Maybe. Or how about, well, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. Save it. And let's see if we can launch it and you can vote on it. And bring up my menu here. Polls, there's a question. There we go, launching the poll. Would you be interested in a workshop? Please answer the poll. That will help us. 2 people have answered. 3, 5. Oh, this is exciting. 8 out of 30, 9, 10. And while you're voting, I see someone asked a question. How do you get a number to automatically increase, such as a PO number? I'm going to throw that open. So, because I'm not sure I understand, but Michelle, we can also talk about this in a second. Okay, 20 of you voted. Any more people voting? Well, nobody said no. That's interesting. Nobody said no. So let's see. Michelle, I'm going to allow you to talk. Could you explain that a little more? I think I've given you allowed to talk. And I'm not hearing you. Oh, I've done it twice. You're on, I think unmute. Here we go. No, I'm trying to unmute you. Okay, you have to unmute yourself, Michelle. Okay, you can talk.
No, I don't have
Go for it.
Phone. Sorry.
You're in here, and I'm not hearing you, so there's 2 unmutes for you, so I'm gonna remove that one. Okay, no, it's not working. There, for some reason, you're on here twice, and one, I'm trying to unmute the second one. I think you kind of, if I promote you to panelist, okay, now try. No, it's not working, Michelle. You and I can talk about this later because I'm not really sure what you mean when you say, that. So let's see, there's more questions here. Oh, I'm not on the phone. I don't have a microphone. That'll do it. Will this webinar be available online after this session? Yes, it will be. I'm going to send you the link to it. I'm also going to send you that Excel file so you won't forget anything. How's that? Okay, I think we're done. And I can't thank you enough. Oh, 3 chats. Oh, yes. Okay. I think we're good. I think we're good. You're welcome. Lori, thank you very much. Okay, that's it for us. And I want to thank you very much. Thanks for voting on the poll. And I'm going to close that poll. And we'll share the results so you can see it. No no's. Okay, so I'll poll the session again at noon, and we'll keep that conversation going with my colleagues and see if we can do a really great, put together a really great workshop. It'll be 1 or 2 days, I think, and probably here in Toronto. So we'll let you know more about that. All right, that's it. We're done. I wish you all a very happy holiday. Thank you so much for staying with me and signing up on the newsletter. One other thing I wanted to show you is to make sure you know about this. I have the new website. I don't know if you've seen this. Reports Your Way. What's in here as well is videos. I've been working on videos, lots of videos. You can also get to those videos on YouTube. On YouTube, it is reports your way, and you can see we have a number of videos here. So there's all sorts of good things. Now, these are not videos you'll find in the JET Help Center. These are videos I wanted to do to complement what JET already does. You will recognize the voice, perhaps. It's my colleague from JET Reports who does or used to do the JET Help Center with the acquisition of JET Global by Insight. They had too many positions the same, and so he's no longer with JET, but he had some free time, and so he helped me out, and he's been doing the videos. Please feel free to look at the videos. If something doesn't make sense, let me know. So he's done a number explaining how to use link equals for nav transactions created during a period, how to get them, how to find out what transactions were created. Some of this has come from customers asking me the question, how can I do this? And I had a customer who said, we need to know how many the transactions that are over $100,000 that are posted during like last week. It's an exception report, but she said, I can only see posting date in the GL transaction. I need to know not the posting date, but the date it was created, because it could be posted in different periods. So I showed her how to do that. Now we're showing you. So lots of different things in here, tricks with JET, and some interesting things you can do with it. And we have tons more ideas that we're going to try and add to this. So please, 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 5 minutes, 3 minutes, less than 4 minutes, or all like 3, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Very short videos. You can have a coffee and maybe learn a little more JET. All right. Again, happy holidays, and hope to hear from you and see you again sometime. Cheers.